Welcome back, everybody. I got a special guest today. Uh, Once again, nothing meant for legal purposes. We talk about history and experiences, past stuff, nothing current. But I'd like to introduce a very experienced dog man from the past, RCC Kennels. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Schoolboy.
Good, good.
How are
Oh
you doing
yeah,
today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm happy now. I get excited like a little kid when I do these things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this will be my first time, so I'm a little excited too.
good, good. We just wing it. Now, first question is, how and when did you get started with the breed?
It's pretty crazy and kind of in depth. I think the pit bull have always kind of been a part of my life. As you grow older, you look back on little things in throughout your life, and they don't really sometimes make sense until you're older.
Right.
But I remember first when I probably my first experience with the pit bulls were when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. A
Wow.
neighbor that lived right next door to me had pit bulls, and they would be barking, get in our trash and everything. And I had once, and I was always kind of scared of them because they just looked so intimidating to a
Right.
5 year old, you
Right.
know. And at one point, I had seen one jump out an attic window onto like the second story over the porch and attack another dog. And this is probably like I would say, shoot, maybe the early '80s. But then when I look back on it, I remember being in the yard with my dad, and I met this guy that lived next door to me later as a teenager, and he was a dog man, but I didn't know what it was back then. And I remember on the weekends the sounds coming from his garage, but that didn't even come close until I was much older. But really, how I really got into the dog game, which is really crazy, and got exposed to the pit bulls. As a kid, I went to a school, and one of the things we did was we had to do like a community service. So I chose the animal control. and and back in the days, it just so happened to be mostly all the guys and a lot of the people at the animal control were dogmen. So I got exposed to it in that aspect, along with just being children and having friends, and we had dogs, and it was just normal. Everybody wanted to have the toughest dogs as little boys.
Right.
So we started with shepherds and mutts and mixed breeds. And I had one friend that's he been pretty consistent dog man over the years. But me and him came up from 5, 6 year old with mutts and German shepherds and Rottweilers. And I was the first one to get a pit bull. Then he got a pit bull. Then I got actually purebred ones with papers. But this had went on throughout our whole lives until we actually were like teenagers. So that was really kind of my first like exposure to them. Let alone too in the '80s and '90s, it was a different era. So there was nothing to where I grew up in Rochester to go up to in the park and have guys out there right at the park while we're playing basketball in the field, rolling dogs.
Kind of normal, huh?
Yeah, it was unbeknownst to a lot of people. It was, I think, I would say, it was probably a cultural thing in the '80s and the '90s.
Right.
That it wasn't uncommon to be at the park and see two guys looking at some dogs together, or it wasn't even it wasn't an uncommon thing to see a guy walking down the street with his bulldog and he's got bleeding on him, or the dogs just was scars. It was the normal, it was more acceptable then. Nobody paid it any attention.
Right.
Like I said, one of the animal control guys in my that worked there, I've seen him. He rolled around with, he was a dog man. He rode around with his dogs in the animal control thing. And at any time, he go drop the animal control truck off and pull back up with a dog and do something for a few $100. So it was just a common thing.
Yeah, that's
And where I
true.
grew up at.
Yeah, it's kind of, you know, it wasn't like you know, everybody knew what a pit bull was, but those people that knew what they were, it wasn't. They didn't look at it as anything bad. You know, they just
Yeah,
accepted it. You know, even some of my older relatives knew what a bulldog was at least. You know, and they fight and all that stuff. You know, it wasn't frowned upon by, you know, a lot of people like it became later. You know.
definitely. And even when somebody had a good dog, it was almost like a symbol of even status.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. 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 What were some, you know, when you really got into it, you know, decided, you know, you're going to be involved in this? What were some of the bloodlines or even dog guys, you know, that you became involved in? You know, like what was your first dogs like? You know.
Well, my first pedigree dog was a dog we had named Bemis, and a friend of mine had bought him for us. I was a teenager at the time, but leading up to that, before I had got the Bemis dog, actually I had run into a guy, Marshall Beasley,
Oh
and
yeah.
another guy named Bird, and so I kind of started learning about the dogs through them. They were like really the predominant dog men in my town,
Right.
and it was really, I learned pretty much about conditioning from them, and just learned about the dogs actually really even before I actually owned a pit bull with papers with a pedigree. Um, Actually, my was one of my mentors, Marshall Beasley. He really he's an older guy, and when I'm maybe 14 or 15 years old, you know, I sit to his house and he tell me about the dogs he had got from Carver, and he break down all the old pedigrees, and he gave me a Maurice Carver keep, and he just kind of gave me a really a understanding of where the dogs came from and why they produce what and all those things. So later on, when I had a friend, and you know, we had non-paper dogs, and by that time, you know, we're rolling them and looking at them, and not really, you know, not really knowing what you got.
Right.
But he really introduced me, you know, to getting an understanding of the breed. But I had another guy that owned the Paz Junior dogs.
Mm.
That when I was like 13 or 14 years old, you know, my mom was just happy that I'm not selling drugs, I'm not doing anything. So these guys were older than me, and they introduced me to a lot of dog men and took me around as a kid, because this is a whole different time to different shows all over the place. So I really got to see firsthand fast lane animals even before I really even had my first fast lane animals, and kind of get an idea of what it was.
Right. That was kind of your schooling process, huh?
Yeah, I learned a lot about the dogs by from these guys, and from like everybody else, reading the Richard Stratton books.
Right.
You know, it just romanticized the whole dogs, the pit bulls, and just the whole game and the fraternity.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that name from the past. For some reason, I wasn't aware that Mr. Beasley was from the north. You know, I always thought because he had Carver's dog, like that Beasley's Thai dog, you know, and I just assumed he was from Texas, you know, because he had Carver dogs, you know.
Actually, it's a pretty funny story about that. Is
Yeah.
he and a couple other guys. One of the guys has passed away too. A guy named Jeffrey Allen. You'll see him in a lot of these dogs' pedigrees. Um, they were going back and forth to Carver, but it was only after they had a dog named, I want to say the dog was named Max, and he was staff and the old Maximilian stuff, Cassius Clay type breeding.
Okay. Yeah.
And they went into a dog that was named Blackie back in the day, which was a Morgan Sandy. I want to say Buster the Sandy dog.
Okay. Yeah.
and it ended up going like over a couple hour show. But the thing was that the Blackie dog was basically off the chain.
Mm.
So they end up winning the show by buying basically an expired dog to get it over with, because the guy would never pick up.
Right.
So after that, they went and started getting dogs from Carver. And it's a funny thing because, you know, not only did they get the dogs from Carver, they were also getting like the red-haired sass and other stuff back in the days.
Right.
They were into all types of other stuff back then.
Yeah.
A lot of people, like my buddy always said, man, Carver was a gangster.
Yeah. Yeah. He was into everything.
Yeah. So they had the dogs off of Stompanato and Missy. They had dogs coming down off of our Ironhead. They were getting dogs from the Fork Farm, Grading Cummins.
Right.
And that's how, you know, that's how really I got really introduced to the blood that I have now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, the guy I got my dogs from, he had one of those, he had a female off of Buster and Sandy named Phoebe, right?
Yeah.
He called her, what did he call her? He called her Missy or something, but her registered name was Phoebe.
Yeah.
And, you know, he had some of that. And then my dogs later on had some Grand Champion Miss Rage in them, you know. But man,
you know what was the funny thing about this story, how the world is connected. So the guy I end up that I was telling you about earlier in the animal control. So the Beasleys and these guys, I want to say it was the late 70s, maybe.
Right.
They had got busted in New York. But the guy that worked for the animal control, he ended up taking the dogs that they got. And the guy that I had seen as a kid growing up, way before I met the Beasleys, those dogs, like the Ironhead dogs and those dogs mixed up with some other stuff, were the dogs that he was actually using in the town. So it was crazy how it just all went full circle.
Yeah, it's a small world, really, when you think about it, you know. And
definitely.
And you know, people, you know, you say them names, you know, like Fork Farm and Carver, Ironhead, and all that. People, man, you go, wow, if they could only have that stuff today. And sometimes, you know, when we have what we have back in the day, we don't realize, you know, the impact they'll have on the breed, you know.
Definitely. You know, for me, what haunts me is I always think to myself, man, I should have bred to that dog. I had the opportunity. Man, I should have repeated that breeding.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Man, that happens so often, you know. A lot of times I had good dogs and I didn't have the knowledge, you know, because I basically had to learn everything on my own.
You know, it was funny as a kid. Like I said, we're 13, 14-year-old. We get a dog, and if you were to put him and like Chance Floyd next to each other, you would think they were twins.
Right.
But we have this dog named McKean, man, and he was like an amazing dog. We ain't know nothing about conditioning or nothing. We were kids. We were driving around in a old Ford Granada. None of us got license plates, and we literally would take this dog and whoop everybody's whole yard with this dog. And only thing, I mean, 3 or 4 dog him in a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He see the car, he jump in the trunk. So it was funny how this is how we had we end up meeting like the Bird and Marshall Beasley and them. It was later on, they had some of those dogs off of Dave's Black Poison with some boomerang crosses on the bottom that Hackman had bred. So they hear about us with these kids with this dog. And eventually word gets out. They bring a dog over off of that has been just running through dogs. And they bring the dog over and our dog just demolish him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so these, you know, we're kids growing up in the ghettos of New York, so we don't trust anybody. Plus, we've been hearing things, this and that. So once they see this dog, they're like, hey, why don't you let us borrow this dog? We're going to match him, do whatever. And that's how we end up being introduced and meeting actual dog men.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's a funny thing though, because I have never seen a dog like him before. And I had another dog, the first dog I had named Peaches. A guy gave her to me. And this was a funny thing about this dog. I had her for like 3 weeks. He said she was trash. She was old, a brindle, like a dirty brindle, junkyard brindle colored dog. So like I said, I'm a kid and I walk this dog every day. And every day I walk by this other guy's yard and he's got a pit bull and she's at the fence. And she walks on the other side of me. So about 4 weeks of walking this dog every day. And this dog is like the little rascal's dog. She's climbing fences, climbing trees with me, getting on the garage, everything. We're kids, you know?
Yeah.
And about 4 weeks of walking her, she starts walking on the inside of me. And when she walks by that dog, she grabs her through the fence. And from that point on, she never turned away. And she was a really unbelievable dog. Looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, she could literally run. She would literally, every dog she went into, man, she'd break your legs. Not just break them, she would shatter them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And she was one of those funny dogs that she would run and she would hit your front legs. And then on a scratch, she would turn her shoulder literally and hit your dog in the air and grab the stifles. And she was just shattering your legs. And I just didn't. Now I know, I'm like, man, this dog was amazing. To one point, as a kid, you know, we would get in packs and just walk our dogs. None of them had papers. We just walked dogs. We were kids. We might be 10 or 15 deep. So one day we did that all day. I ran her on the bike all day until she was exhausted. You know, I mean, to the point exhausted. We're up at the park. Guys are talking shit. We ended up rolling her that day, and she literally took a chewing for 30 minutes, got up and just destroyed this other dog that had pretty much whooped every dog in the town.
Wow. Yeah.
But just not knowing, you know, didn't know what I had, man. And when I got home, my mom was on my ass so bad. And it was crazy. It was crazy because, you know, this dog was like my best friend. So not knowing anything and seeing her all hurt like that, man. I was a kid, man. I cried. I feel so bad and everything. And my mom was on my ass. It was crazy, but it lit a bug in me. It was something about seeing a dog. I didn't even realize what I was seeing at the time, but
go through.
I knew it was something special. Yeah. It was something to just basically let somebody beat you up for 30 minutes, and while you're so exhausted, and get up and kick their ass.
Yeah.
I knew it was something different.
Right. It's funny because, you know, I talk to a lot of people, you know, they ask me for advice, I give this and that. And back then, you know, you have those experiences with those dogs, you know. And, you know, we advise people, you know, give them enough rest and take care of them, don't do this, don't abuse them, all this stuff we talk about. But doing things like that, you know, you know, from looking back then and then into later years, you know, where you don't do that anymore, you see, you think back, man, those dogs, we put them through a lot of stuff, man, and they went through it no problem, you know. You could be rolling the same dog every weekend, you know, still fresh scars on them, or you put them, like you said, you run them to the ground and then go do this and that with them, you know. And we don't learn, you know, till later the right way to do things. But if you think about it, those dogs are amazing just to be able to go through that, you know.
Oh, half the dogs I've owned, and I've had some really good dogs, couldn't take what I put those dogs through.
Yeah.
But it was really a good thing for me, because what I learned there with my Peaches dog is that inspired me to learn about the medical, how to care for them, to start getting antibiotics and shots and all those things. Right. So at that point, even though I was learning to become like almost a neighborhood vet as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, learning, I realized I needed to learn how to take care of them.
Amazing.
Better and to heal them up. So that really was a big thing on me, just learning the overall care and to help them recover and take care of them.
That's the thing you got to do, is take those experiences and make something positive out of them. You know, even the losses, definitely. Learn from them and go forward. You know.
You know, I always one of the big things I've learned is a lot of people have a lot of knowledge, but just having it and knowing how to apply it is two different things.
Yes, sir.
And just for me, something I've always tried to do. I try to learn from my wins as well as my losses, understanding why you lost, and when you win, dissecting your wins as if you had lost, and understand, okay, if I'd had done this, he would have been better at this, or I would have had a better experience here, and just even taking your wins and dissecting them like your losses, and always looking to do better.
Yeah, I think
Not
that's
just taking
important.
a win and say, "Oh, I won and he was perfect" and all that. Find the flaws, and even then, when you win.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree because you can learn from that. Like you said, usually it's, how do I improve on that? How do I get a little bit better? What could I have done different? But
Exactly.
but you're right in
But most
saying
people,
that, if you don't practice it, it's if it's all in your head or all in theory, that doesn't matter. You got to put it to use, hands on, and all that.
definitely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, what were some of the besides Mr. Beasley and the other guy? What were some of the other people that you considered, around that time were like very good dogmen or top notch, whether conditioning, breeder, whatever it is, or both? You know, I know the past
You
junior
know,
stuff came from STP, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say there was a guy named Castro that, like I said, had a past junior dog. There were the Bishop boys in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was fortunately able to meet back in those days the Jersey boys, Strictly Business, Jesse Rods.
Yeah.
All those guys were the guys back there. You know, STP kennels, real deal kennels back in those days.
Right.
Tom Ratliff.
Okay. Yeah.
You
All.
know, what was his name? Fergie.
Yeah. Yeah. All of them
Yeah, all those a lot of those old time guys
top
were
guys.
around there.
Yeah.
Garland,
Right. Right.
Ozzy,
Yeah.
a lot of different guys back in that days.
Yeah.
And I really didn't. It's a funny thing. You really don't know who you know at the time. You don't really even understand it.
Right.
The presence of the people you're in. Even back in those days, I met the guys, Carolina Kennels up in Wilmington, Delaware.
Mm.
And I was like, I was a kid then,
Yeah.
teenager still. Just traveling the shows with the older dog man, and just going around and seeing. I met a lot of people, the Latino brothers, just all types of guys back in the
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of what you say mirrors, what I went through too. You don't realize you're in the presence of these guys.
Yeah,
And you know, Jesse, all them people you named. If you're in the dogs for any length of time, you know who they are. But at the time, you may not realize it. Who they are. But Jesse had Grand Champion Midnight, and the Jersey Boys had. Uh, uh,
Black Bumpers back then.
there you go. Did you
They
get to
had
see
Black
any of them
Bumpers.
dogs?
Seen Black Bumpers go. They had the other Jersey Boys. I seen the Sarge dog go.
Okay.
The Rage after Paul had sold her, but he had condition handled her,
Right.
which was a crazy in itself because you know the funny thing about people think dog men are so hard and so cruel, But I remember when Paul had took the Rage dog, he had sold her for a decent amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But under the terms, he had conditioned to handle her, and he would tell the guys, hey, she's not right, we should pay the forfeit. And on that particular night, he had went into the champion Busy dog, and she ended up losing the Busy.
Mm.
And I remember seeing Paul had a tear down his eye because he really loved the Rage dog, and he knew she wasn't right, but because it wasn't his dog, he was doing what he was doing the job.
Right.
He had sold her and been paid to condition her and handle her. So at the end of the day, it wasn't his job to say, hey, we're gonna pay the forfeit or any of that. So
Right.
I really seen the hurt in Paul that night.
Yeah.
And the Jersey Boys.
Yeah. I know Mr. Bill pretty good, and I don't think he ever called a dog. He would take care of them till they got old, man. He didn't,
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like that, and they, like you said, people have a sometimes they have an opinion about how dog guys are, and they're not that way, man. We love our dogs. And
You, you
go ahead.
know, and I think that comes along with the importance, and a lot of people are missing that in today's thing. When you breeding a dog, um, it's important to breed a really well-rounded dog. I had never thought of it, but a friend of mine, a wise friend of mine, told me the other day, the dog is only spending a small portion of his life as being a pit dog. So it's really important
Yeah,
breeding a dog that is an all-around dog. So if he's not what you want to be, that he can still be serve a purpose for somebody or something.
yep, that's true because the if you think about it in real time, the schooling, the showing, all that stuff, it may be a few hours out of their life. That's all it is, you know.
Yeah,
And the other time, they're just a regular dog, whether it's a pet, whether it's a companion, or whether it's a house dog, or just a regular dog. And it could do other things too. So they have
yeah,
legal sports now, and you have, they even use them. They take them into old folks' homes, because they're so good with people. They understand that someone's sick or little kids. Like my grandson, he has autism. And he's raised a couple of pups for friends of ours, pit bulls. Man, they
yeah,
take to him like they know that he has a problem, and they understand what it is, and so they kind of just go along with whatever he wants. He trains them to do this or that. He walks them around. Instead of using a lead, he just grabs them by the ear, and they just go along
yeah.
with it. It's trippy. I don't think some of the things he did with them I could ever do with a dog, because I don't have that whatever it is in him that gets them to do it. So yeah, I
I think
agree.
a lot of that is lost in us. I believe, and this is something I tell guys, man. One thing about a dog is you can't lie to him. He knows what's in your heart.
Right.
And I think we're designed as probably human beings really to really use that connection with our animals, with our people, with everything. But we have just gone away from that. So, a dog is his senses and everything is way different. He's picking up on your energies, he's smelling your hormones, your sweat, all these things. So when you're not confident or you're something else, he's picking up on all those things. But most people are so in tune to, they don't even look at, a lot of people don't even look at dogs as living, breathing, feeling things, entities
Right.
that are connected to us on a level,
Yeah,
far greater level than most people can even understand.
I agree. I agree. It's almost spiritual, and
It's
we
definitely a
kind
lot of
of,
spiritualness to it.
yeah, you kind of, you if you're around them enough, you have an understanding about them, and you have those feelings about them, where it comes from, this and that, just all the things you're saying. And it's funny now we have science backing a lot of that stuff up that we used to say and do back in the day. I mean, we didn't have technical terms for it, and we didn't, we weren't educated on all that stuff. But now they're saying the same thing. They can smell your pheromones. They can the sweat, the breath, the way your body language. They can read you. Or now some dogs can tell who has cancer, and
Or
that's the
when you're
point.
going to have a seizure.
Exactly like that. And
But
and
I think it goes both ways.
I do too.
You ever notice, like, you've had experience with dogs. You ever notice, right, when you see your dog and hey, the blood count is right, everything is right, but you just feel in your gut and there's something isn't right. There's something wrong.
Yep, he's off.
He's off.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It might not be during your working. It might just be like, hey, I walked in the house today and just something is wrong. Something is just off. It's almost like when you're home alone and you know if everybody left, you can feel that the presence that you're home alone.
right.
As even if you don't hear your wife downstairs or anything like that, you feel in your presence on a whole nother spiritual level, connection level, that she is downstairs.
Yeah,
You might have not heard her all day, you might have nothing, but you know she's there. Just like if she's not there, you wake up feeling like, hey, I'm the only one here in the house alone.
Yep, exactly. Or sometimes, we've been together so long, over 40 years, I'll come in the
Yeah.
house or she'll walk in the room or whatever. She went and did something or I went and did something. I come back and she'll go, "What's wrong?" Like, "What?" He goes, "What's wrong? What happened?" She knows already. It could be the look on my face or how I said hello or whatever, you kind of have that feeling. You kind of, and I think if you spend enough time with the dogs, you have those feelings. It's just a look about them. It could be, you know, their eyes, how they look, or their body language, they seem they just look off, and
Oh yeah.
if
But
you,
we have gotten away from our spiritual side. Everything has to be explained to everybody for them to believe it. But some things are just unexplainable.
that's true.
Some things we are predestined to, pre-programmed to,
Yep. Yep.
and that goes along with everything. Dogs being man's best friend.
Yeah, I agree.
He was put here. We were put here to look over him, but him to look over us too.
Yeah.
There's no love like dog love. You can love a lot of women, you can love a lot of things, but there's no love like the dog love. You have an old dog and you had him for years, and something happens to him.
Yeah.
That's a different type of connection, and it's really, the dog is really basically what really teaches us about the unconditional love.
So true, man. So true. It's probably the oldest domesticated animal, known to man, and a lot of that stuff is just inherent through the hundreds and thousands of years or whatever it is that they've been around and we've been connected to them, and we share a lot of similarities. They're even doing studies about that now, how the family unit and certain behaviors, humans compared to dogs, and they can get the information from dogs quicker than they can from humans because dogs don't live that long, so they go to their lifespan is shorter, and
Yeah.
they're starting to track at what age they do this, and how the family unit is connected and the hierarchy and all this stuff that my point is that's how connected we are to canines, to dogs.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I always one of my favorite movies was Seabiscuit, and I always loved this line that they said. And the turn of the century, a man needed two things: a good horse and a good fighting dog.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He needed two things: a
Yeah.
good dog and a good horse.
Yeah.
If you had those two things, you were going to be all right.
Yeah. 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 I even post. I watch a lot of old movies, and
Yeah.
there's a movie called the the Lady and the Boxer or something. I forgot. Anyways, it's got a couple of champions. It's got Dempsey in there. It's got Max Baer and stuff. And there's
Uh
a
huh.
scene where the bartender is talking, and they mention some guy's name, some fighter's name, and the guy's, "Oh yeah, he's as tough as a pit bull." This
Yeah.
was in the 1930s, so the breed was common all around,
Oh
and
yeah. A
yeah,
lot more common and a lot more respected than it is today.
oh, a lot more. Yeah. Yeah.
Because really, unfortunately, you know, people believe everything they hear, and they never reach to go and find out the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything's opinionated. Everybody's a bunch of bandwagon
Yeah.
jumpers and never get to experience these things for themselves.
Right.
And our news has just become a thing for a propaganda machine to change your views, to get you to vote a certain way, to whatever. The
Right.
news is not reporting the news anymore. It's reporting opinions.
I agree. I agree. People now have a tendency to believe whatever they're told without doing any research to find out if it's the truth or not. That's the difference, I think, from the past and now. So you hear something online or news report or whatever, and people just believe it. I
Oh
always
yeah.
question it. Where'd they get that from, or how? Who said that, or
Oh,
is that accurate, or whatever. I've just always been that way.
oh,
Even
me too. I was taught that from my parents and just being in school.
yeah, yeah,
Don't believe, question everything.
everything. Yeah,
It's like a funny thing as always that I hear these people talking about, oh, I got this dog and he was a bait dog. That is some of the most made up shit I ever heard in my life.
Crazy.
Excuse my language.
Yeah. No.
No dog man I ever heard in my whole life of dealing with dogs, of bait dogs, people using mutts and all this stuff. But a lot of people think that.
They believe it. And just on a practical level, it doesn't make any sense. There's nothing to gain from that. There's nothing
Yeah,
to
it makes sense to a person that knows nothing.
right. Yeah. No, really, you're right. Right. What benefit is that of letting your dog kill some old poochie, some little poodle or something? There's nothing.
Yeah.
A dog man wouldn't do that. A real one. There's no point to it.
Oh yeah, but society preys on two things: ignorance and fear. Fear is one of the strongest emotions you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And so as long as they can keep us scared and ignorant, we're doomed.
They can control us. That's true.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, I just, like you said. In fact, a lot of that comes from my mom and my dad, my parents. Where'd you hear that from? Don't believe that, or what? Find out. Research. Do this and that. Ask questions. All that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Even figures of authority. Just because this person has a certain station in life doesn't mean he knows anything.
Definitely.
It's funny. I've met some doctors that are pretty dumb. They know their profession. A surgeon. In fact, one was a surgeon. He knew his stuff. But common sense, practical things, he couldn't change the tire on his car, and he didn't even understand the concept of changing a tire, where you got to undo the bolts first. And he's like, why? Why would you do, why don't you just do it when you lift it up and this and that? No, just things like that. Yeah. Anyways, that's my point. Dumb as a rock.
Definitely.
A good surgeon, I'm sure, but man.
Oh yeah, but and intelligence has nothing to do with school.
Right.
You get some of the most intelligent people you may meet in life. Mike can read and write.
Yeah. Oh, I knew some in my youth. They literally could not read and write, and had good jobs. Working in heavy equipment.
Problem-solving skills.
Yeah. Knew how to build houses. They could do carpentry, all this stuff,
Exactly. So
there's that, But
that's just a form of them separating us also.
I agree.
Trying to make a hierarchy that, if you go here and you do this and you have this paper, that makes you better than anybody else.
Right.
Where, intelligence has nothing to do with schooling.
That's true.
True. And being able to apply the things you learn and to your everyday life is a form of intelligence. And like you said, this guy is a brain surgeon, but can't even understand the theory of changing a car.
Yeah. Or know how a battery works, that.
Yeah.
A rechargeable battery. Well, it went dead. Well, how come it went dead? Because it lost its juice, like that. And it went past his head, And where that came from is I used to work for a burglar and fire alarm company, and I had to surface his home. And during that visit, where he's talking, and man, in my mind, even back then, I'm going, man, this guy's dumb. He don't know nothing, But
But see, the intelligence is where he lacks at. The intelligence is the understanding, the relatability to the battery and the human brain or the human body.
Right.
That's where he lacked the intelligence at.
Yeah.
Is able to take certain things and incorporate them to other things. Having intelligence, the problem solving skills to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And rationalize those things.
Exactly. Yep, I agree. And with that, what were some of your favorite dogs that you had, or you would consider your best, or whatever, however you want to put it,
I probably run the dogs on a different scale than most dog men, because where I was at in my life and the dogs I experienced as a younger person. So for a dog to be I had a lot of dogs. I couldn't really name one that was my favorite.
Right.
But to be considered like my best dog, he needed to be able to do anything and everything I needed. Just being a pit dog has never been enough for me.
Right.
He needed to be good with kids. He needed to be able to, like for me, if I had a dog and he tangled himself up around a tree and didn't have enough sense to go around the other way and untangle himself, you could pretty much come and get him for me for nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's how important intelligence is.
Yeah, and so the intelligence thing, and when you talk about a good dog, uh, 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 a great dog in my book, he needs to have, he needs to discern between a threat. He needs to be able to understand that this is a child, and I'm not on the end of the leash not to drag this kid down or not to wrap my kid up in the bucket. You know what I mean? Not to jump out the window. But that comes a lot with socializing. But I also understand that that comes with breeding. But a truly great dog is a dog that he reproduces those traits in his children.
Yeah, I mean
You know,
you're
so
mirroring a lot of what I say. So I'm guessing that even though we were other side of the country, you come to these conclusions or you have these standards about dogs that other people share. I've been finding that out too. I'm not the only one that thinks that way. You know.
you know what? I grew up watching Little Rascals,
Yeah,
so that's stuck in with me my whole life, man.
me too.
I want my dog to be able to walk off the leash.
Yeah,
I want to be able to take my dog and play fetch with him. I want to be able to take my dog to your house and you have cats and not worry about him attacking them, or your kids come over my house and not worry about my dog jumping and scratching them. You know what I mean?
yep,
All those things, I don't want a dog. I'm not going to tolerate a dog that will kill my puppies or attack a chihuahua or any of those things. I take that as a sign of the weakness and being a bully,
hmm,
you know?
very good, very good. Yeah,
So, you know, for me, I would have to say one of my best dogs I had, and this goes back to Marshall Beasley. I sit there and this was probably in the late '80s, early '90s when I bought my one of my first dogs that was outside of Rochester. I got a dog from Ed from Wildside Kennels, and for months and months, me and Marshall Beasley, we sit there at his house. I'm a kid at the time, and Ed had sending me these pedigrees, but prior to this, me and him talked dogs, and he's showing me these breedings of how Divo was produced and why he produced, and how this dog was related to this dog and the uncle and niece breeding, and basically showed me the recipe how to breed good dogs.
hmm,
So we go through these pedigrees, pedigrees, pedigrees. I end up getting a dog named Peaches from Ed. And when I got the dog, I had really my intent was to breed her to a dog named Sydney, a dog named Duke that was off a Pretty Boy. The Bully Son Ars Missy stuff with the Bully Son with the Heisel and Bully Son bred to Mendocino at bottom produced the dog Cherry.
right.
So I get this dog from Ed, and that was my thing. And she's basically a heavy Eli Jr. bred Niggerino dog. She was renegade to a dog named Minnie Mouse, which was a weirdo to a daughter of Mean Jolene. It was Lucifer bred to a daughter of Weirdo and Mean Jolene to
Okay.
get her mom, and then Renegade on the top. So my intent was, I got her to breed to this basically pure Bully Son dog and do a line breeding, basically in theory, two cousins to each other.
Right.
And I got amazing dogs off of that. Did the breeding once. I should have bred it more. But he told me at that point, hey, the best dogs you're going to get her bred to is breeding her to your Ivan dog, which was off of the Duke dog, but bred to the Bolio out. And he was right. I got a more well-rounded dog, a better dog, smarter dog, just all around, just a higher quality dog.
Right.
But I didn't know that at the time either.
Hmm.
So for me, she was really the catalyst to my kennel. Mostly any of the dogs that, and I'm not gonna say mostly every dog you see that has the RCC in them or the Rochester Combine is gonna have her through them. She was a amazing dog, a great producing dog, a dog I'd never ever seen take a step backwards or make a turn or even grab a ear and kick her legs back.
Right. That's your
You know,
basically your foundation.
that was my foundation bitch right
Yeah.
there. And really, one thing I learned with having a female there, I can breed to any male dog in the world pretty much for money, for the most part. having that goose that lays that golden egg is the one you need.
Definitely. I agree.
So as far as having a great dog, all around dog, now she lacked in some of the other things that I later, some of the other things I like, but she had produced dogs, really good dogs that produce good dogs, and she was solid animal herself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the best, you know, best bitches I ever had and owned. I just, even at the time, she was way more advanced than I was as a dog man.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It was later that I would become to appreciate her more.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That happens
Probably,
often.
but I would say in recent time, my champion Gabe dog and my grand champion Sissy dog were probably two of the best dogs that I had and owned and raised, because they were like, hey, you could ride them in your car. They could be off the leash. They get along with other dogs. They get along with the kids. Sit, stay. My gay dog was a confirmation champion. He was a lifeguard when my daughter ran away. He was a bloodhound. He could find her. He did everything. You could have asked for the dog.
Yeah.
Both of them were just amazing in that aspect.
Yeah. Man, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I guess you're kind of like me, and as far as breeding goes, you prefer the female, or that, I kind of paid more attention to the females and made sure they were sound and all that. Because males are available, they are available. Males important, don't get me wrong, but I just put so much into the females that because they are the foundation, that I wanted to make sure they were just the best that I could produce.
I didn't really realize it when I was younger, but it even makes more sense to me now because, like they said, there has been studies, even with people, that the female, because of her genetics, her genes, what she goes through and all that, and throughout her life, and why she's pregnant, not only it affects your child.
Yeah.
So in turn, that will, if you flip it from people, it's going to affect your puppies the same way. So having a solid female and having a good, healthy, solid female with healthy traits is really important. Like you said, she's only going to have maybe 1 or 2 litters a year. You can breed to any male dog, but having that solid foundation bitch is really important.
Yeah, yeah.
You look at the history of the dogs like, Honey Bunch, Dirty Mary, all these dogs.
Yep, Black Widow, Tudor's Gold.
Yeah.
They don't get a lot of credit, but breeders, they put a lot into those females. And
the one thing I've always looked for in my dogs is, this is one thing I will tell everybody. They're like, oh, you can breed this and that. Common trait in all my dogs are, you're going to see Dibo and Black Widow in them all.
Yep, that's the key.
That's the key to me.
To a lot of people.
The Dibo Black Widow.
Even, let's say someone is not real familiar with the dogs in the past. If they have what they consider a good dog and they look behind that dog's pedigree, in the past, they're going to see that there somewhere. They're going to see it. It's there.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be Dibo Black Widow, Spike Black Widow, or Zeke Black Widow. But Black Widow is the
Arizona Pete. Yep. You're going to see those dogs. Right. White Rock. You're going to see those dogs.
Exactly. And now, because the female is, she has to be healthy. And she's the one giving the nutrition to the pups. And her behavior, her temperament behavior when they're first born, what she teaches them, even though it's maybe a few weeks only, it's important to the outcome of that puppy when it becomes an adult. So those are some of the reasons why the female is so important. They're the first influence, put it that way.
You think of this, in our lives as human beings, our first nurturing and the first part of our lives is all about our mothers.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We will go on to transfer from the mother's relationship to the father's relationship, but that nurturing, all those things start with the female.
That's true. That's true. That's their role as far as I'm concerned. My grandma was that way, my mom's that way, my wife is that way. That's what they give to the family for the most part. They're caretakers. They nurture. They handle stuff. That's and I guess because pit bull, they're mammals. They have a lot of those same qualities that we admire.
Oh, definitely. And you see, in the thing in the world right now is probably one of the things that the world is going that way is because you know, um, a lot of us have a lot of women of today, not all, but they have lost that nurturing.
Yeah, they've gotten away
You
from it.
know,
You know.
they have gotten away from that, and it is. I definitely believe in. I'm not trying to get all political or anything, but I think it's by design because if you can separate the family, you can control them.
Yeah.
So when you get the woman thinking she don't need the man, and that Uncle Sam is going to take care of her, and she can do it without him, it goes hand in hand because for the first part, you really need the woman to be a nurturer,
Yep.
and
No,
the
I
second
agree.
part you need the man. But even in your household, you've been married to your wife for 40 years.
Yeah.
If she wasn't a nurturing woman, y'all wouldn't be together 40 years. So there's been
Exactly.
times where she got to tell you, hey, you got this, baby. It's all right. We're going to get through this.
Yep.
She might not need to do anything. You just need to know that, hey, you got my back.
That's it.
I got you. It's all right.
Yep.
I'm with you.
And it's not just us saying this. There's been studies done on it that reflects exactly what we're talking about here. It's
Yeah.
just the way it is. And hey, maybe people will again do some research, find out what what behaviors and temperaments. Why do these people, and in this case we're talking about dogs, why do they behave that way? What is it in them
Definitely.
that makes them so close to humans, or why is there such a relationship between canines and human beings? And it'll help
You
you
know
in your
what?
breeding. It'll help you even how you raise your dogs. You raise them a certain way, you know and the outcome
They
could be better.
definitely, and that's really where it starts with the diet and how you are raising them. A lot of people don't really understand that. Like you said earlier, is that really the schooling process with your dogs starts when they are born, and raises throughout their puppyhoods by you
Yep.
socializing them, by you training them, what you're feeding them. You can't feed them trash and expect him to reach his fullest physical potential or mental potential.
Right.
You cannot ride him in the car and wait till he's 3 years old and forgot about him. Think he's going to just ride in the car good or ride in the crate good or any of these things. One of the big things I do is, I've always, hey, 4th of July, I'm taking my dogs to the fireworks. I'm taking them to the farmer's market as young dogs growing up. I'm taking them to the beach. I'm getting them in those situations with different smells, different people where people are almost stepping on them, falling over around black people, white people, music, loud noises, ocean noises, all these things is just getting them to that point. And more importantly, getting them to the point that, hey, if you don't work out and I can't use you, you have been socialized and trained that you can maybe go somewhere and make somebody a really good pet or do something else.
Right. I mean, that's great stuff because my thing was I want them to be comfortable wherever they're at, in front of whoever,
Exactly.
you know. And unfortunately, a lot of people they didn't raise their dogs that way, because I guess maybe the nature of the game and all that, they want to be secluded and they don't want a lot of, you don't have to let a lot of people over your house. You don't have to have, with me, it was close friends and family members. I didn't really let outsiders to my house, but that doesn't mean I
Yeah.
didn't take my dogs out and do all those things that you're talking about.
Yeah. For me, a big thing I think too also help developing my dogs. When I was in 2000, I got hit by a drunk driver.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, my children are older. They got 2 broken legs, a broken back, a brain injury, broken ribs, everything. So, I really had to I really cut my stock down a lot to what I had at that point because, my kids might have to go out there and feed the dogs.
Right.
My neighbor might have to. All these things. So it had to be a certain type of dog. I'm injured, I can't have a dog that's out there self-destructive, knocking over his bucket, finding his chain. That is all detrimental to him growing up to be whatever. So that was a really big turning point to me on what dogs I kept and how I bred them, what dogs I bred.
Mm-hmm.
And then habits I learned from other dogs. You get one dog that is always digging, knocking over his bucket, doing all these things. Other dogs pick up on those habits.
Yeah, true.
You know, I don't like barking.
Yeah.
If they're barking, I know there's something going on.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's all part of it, you know. What did you feed back in the day? Was it straight kibble? Did you add this or that or
You know, I started off basically feeding kibble.
mm-hmm.
But one of my first jobs was I got that was actually they're taking taxes out of was I worked at a place called Pamper Pets. I'm about 15 years old. So I'm getting the IMs and all that stuff. And even back then I was going to the Sam's Club where you could get, they called it maximum something. It was a chicken and whatever. The bag now is like $40 or something.
Yeah.
But back then it was like $9.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was able to feed, you know, a really good dog food. And then I was getting dog food from work where their bags are damaged or they're free coupons. So I would be loaded up, but I was feeding mostly kibble, pretty much all kibble. Later on, I got up with some a kosher butchering, a friend of mine that owned a butchering place. He was a Muslim, Turkish, and would give me all the scraps.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I was doing that, and then in New York, it gets really cold in the winter, so you could get a box of what we call like a 40-pound box of chicken backs.
Yeah.
For like $10.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we would pretty much boil that down until even the bone became mush.
Yeah.
And it gets so cold there, we would mix that with the kibble like a soup, because that's the only way the dogs are really getting any water intake because it's so cold that time of year.
Yeah, they won't drink water. Yeah.
They won't drink water, so we're basically had a really huge pod, and you know, in the winters we were feeding the chicken mixed with the kibble.
Yeah, they have like a warm meal at night, you know.
Yeah, definitely, and you're forcing them to get the water in them too, also.
Yeah.
Because if not, they, like you said, they won't drink water. It's too cold.
Yeah, it's too
cold.
You know. Yeah. So you know, it just even if you don't realize it, you know, you're giving them a hot meal, you're giving them fluids, which they would otherwise lack, and plus it has a tendency to make them settle down. You know, they got a belly full, they'll go settle down and just sleep all night. You know, they won't be
definitely
jumping and running around and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how about conditioning? Like, did you do hand walking, treadmill? Did you have different methods, or what did you like to do?
You know, like I said, I started off. I first learned was the carver keep, and it consisted of hand walking and pretty much treadmilling.
Right.
You know, so that's what I started with. Throughout my years, though, I went and shoveled shit and went to different. I've been to the ET kennels and stayed months there and learned his conditioning, and I learned a lot from Hargrove and everything else. And I realized really, I used the basics of what I learned from my friend Bird and Marshall Beasley, and I've never taken away from that. But I've added different things to that because every dog is not gonna work the meal
right
the way you want them to. Most people don't even know how to use a meal. So, you know, every dog is not going to do what you want them to do. So I've always followed the dog, man. I have, when I was younger, if it took me jogging 5 or 10 or 20 miles with a dog or every day, I bike them. I'm doing swimming, whatever it needs to be done. I'm just trying to follow the dog and get the best out of him,
mm-hmm.
you know, because really, at the end of the day, no keep is for every dog.
Right.
You know, every body type has its advantages and disadvantages. And whatever you're doing with your dog, your key is just like as if a boxer. You want to train your boxer to be able to impose his will on his opponent. You're not going to train a Mike Tyson the same way you would train a Parnell Whitaker.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because what he does good is different. So, you know, I've biked them, I swimmed them, I've used a bungee, I've used a treadmill. I've pretty Hey, I've done a keep with nothing but basically a flirt pole and a spring pole before and hand walking.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it depends a lot on the animal. Just follow on the animal and whatever he'll do, you got to be able to be a great conditioner. I think you got to be able to adjust
I
and
agree.
just follow the dog. You know, the
Yep.
dog ain't gonna lead you wrong. Just follow the dog. You know, but a lot of that I think comes along though with you starting those things early. You know, you look at a Tiger Woods. You know, his dad started him playing golf as a kid. You know, so to raising and having dogs that do these things and being a good conditioner is really about the schooling with them as a puppy. You know,
Yep.
getting out. Like when my dogs were pups, there's nothing to get on the four-wheeler on the bike, and I lived in the woods, so I'll get 20, 30 pups, and I ride my mountain bike and let them all run behind it. You
Yep.
know,
Yeah. I agree.
being just smart enough to understand, hey, having the dog in the same room as the dog working the treadmill, dogs learn by watching and learn from other dogs. They're a lot smarter than people give them credit for.
Yeah. No, that's
So
true. I would even
just,
sometimes
introducing
if
them
I
to
had
things early.
a pup that kind of a slow starter,
Yeah.
I'd put him in a crate and set him up on a bench or something, and he'd be seeing the other dogs schooled, and
Oh,
just
yeah,
see how
that.
he react. He gets excited. Sometimes they don't, but if they're starting to get excited and start growling like that, they're kind of getting the idea. So it's that same thing.
Oh,
And
yeah. It's a lot of things are, whether it's nature versus nurture, I guess is they call it, right?
mm-hmm.
So that's a big thing, too, is just letting them and dogs I say dogs are funny in the sense that they are jealous. When they see you doing something with another dog and he's getting praise and whatever, they're going to want to emulate because they're going to want the same attention.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's now we learn this stuff as we're learning about the breed and dealing with dogs and all that stuff. And now, like I said, they put scientific terms to them. They would call that epigenetics now.
Yeah.
How you raise them, the environment, the feed, all that stuff plays a part in the final outcome. Or what the animal will develop to be.
You know, that is a funny thing to me, and I think this, right? Take any great dog in history and we clone him, right? Is he ever gonna? Well, he will never be the same dog he was.
No.
You take a champion or your big red dog or anything, you clone him right now, and who's to say he's gonna? Paz Jr. is gonna be champion Paz Jr.
Yeah.
Grand champion Buck is gonna be grand champion Buck again.
Right.
He
The
might be
the
greater. He might be lesser.
Yeah. Right. The clone. What you'll see more of is how the dog looks, like the structure and how it's built, like that. That part, the cloning, it'll come out more so. But as far
Yeah.
as the temperament, behavior, even certain things, in the environment that you raise them in. If you raise a certain
Exactly.
dog in the cold and one in the heat, even if they're clones, they're not going to be the same dog. That's true.
Even down to people. I tell you this, right? People don't understand, man. Depending on where you're at and your water source, it's going to play a large part on your dogs.
That's right.
Their teeth, their colds,
Yep.
how their resistance to things, everything. So, one of the things I did too is I learned is after I was hurt and stuff, I bred a dog. I made sure I never bred any dogs that were ever like sick or anything.
Yeah.
I needed a dog that was really, really hardy.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a situation now where I'm in a body cast for over a year and a half, and I need a dog that is really low maintenance.
Yeah.
He needs to be really, really strong dog that can survive off little, if possible, as little as possible.
Yeah. They got to be durable, and that including internal organs and thick skin
Exactly.
and bone and like that.
And
Health
mentally strong.
health matters. Now people have a tendency, if something's wrong, to give them some medicine or give them this or give them that, take them. I'm not saying that doesn't have its place, but in my day, if it was some minor stuff, we really didn't. I wasn't giving them an injection of antibiotics every time they had a sniffle or something like that, you know?
No, they got to be able to build up the thing, but that
Yeah.
is the thing now in today's time. You look at all the diseases that didn't exist before.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted
You
them to
know,
have
your
a good
body had
immune
to
system.
naturally be able to fight things off themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Even the food, you know, I had a certain feed I give, you know, it was a good kibble like you, and then, you know, you might add some meat or this or that, you know. But my kids would give them all kinds of crap. And I didn't,
Oh,
you know, that was their companion. They're doing their thing, having their little party or whatever they're doing. So if they're giving them chips or salsa or lettuce or crap or whatever it is, a piece of candy, I didn't really get on them about it because, you know, I wanted the dogs to have a good resistance to outside stuff, you know, and I never really had a problem with it. It never upset their stomach or gave them the runs or anything like that. If it did, it was fleeting, you know,
yeah.
and
Life is about balance, though. And now that we get around a little more and you get a better understanding, dog is kind of, he eats meat, but he also eats a lot of other things.
a lot
He's
of other
kind of a
stuff.
forager,
Yeah, they
you know.
do.
He's
And
gonna eat fruit. He's
yeah,
gonna eat what is
yeah,
available, but
yeah,
he is governed by a greater power than us, his
yeah,
instinct.
yeah,
So, you know, as of us as people, you know,
yeah.
when you
Well,
have an urge or a taste or something, that's probably our really going deep into our mind of our body telling us, hey, you need to eat this
yeah,
because you need to balance.
yeah. It has
But
some
we
nutrient
just
in it that we need.
we overlook
Yeah,
that. Where a
yeah,
dog is all, that is what he is based on, is instinct.
exactly,
So he
exactly.
doesn't question the reason why he wants
Yeah,
this or decide, oh, I want something else.
yeah. No, I've seen. You know, I grew up country, and you see these programs on TV. You know, they do these on different animals. You know, and you know, canines are mostly carnivorous. That's true. You know, but
Yes,
people they would come up to me and say, you know, coyotes don't eat. All they eat is rodents and meat and this and that. You know, gophers and all that, rabbits. I said, no, they don't. I worked on a farm. You know, my dad ran a farm, and I said I've seen them eat apples and berries and grass and crickets and bugs, along with all that vermin that they eat. You know,
definitely. It
and
was times, you know, out here in the country where I was at, you know, you go and the guy's got a whole bunch of sweet potatoes, you know, or a whole bunch of apples or something.
yeah,
It'd be times where I'll just throw all the dogs apples. They're all throw them all an apple that day or something, or
yeah,
potato or whatever. You
yep,
know,
it's free.
life is all about balance. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and it's free, and then life is all about balance.
yeah, yeah. Now you got to have it. Some people, you know, people have told me, you know, they ask me what I feed and this and that, and they'll say, "Well, I don't, you know, I don't give my dog carbs." And I tell them, "You mean you don't give them extra carbs?" They go, "Nope, I don't feed my dogs carbs. They're meat eaters, this and that." And I say, "Well, tell me what you feed, and I'll tell you what carbs you're giving them." And they'll
Yeah,
give me their thing. I say, "Well, you're the sweet potato, that's carbs. Honey, that's carbs. The pasta, rice, whatever it is, that's carbs. Any root vegetable, that's carbs. Any grain, any
it's
legume,
gonna have
that's
carbs in it.
carbs in it." So don't tell me you don't feed your dogs carbs. It's in there. It's just that they don't have that mindset, you know. So your
it
diet, it will have protein, fat, carbs, vitamins, minerals, trace elements. They have all that. That's a balanced diet, and every mammal at least needs that, you know.
definitely.
Yeah. So I get kind of animated sometime because, you know, and with wolves it's a little different, but they, hey, when nature calls, they're going to eat whatever they find necessary to eat
And,
to survive.
and and more importantly, and people forget this whole thing, right? Wolves, carnivores, everything. They eat mostly animals that are are herbivores,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
What
That's
are the
true.
first thing they're eating? Your stomach, your kidneys, your liver, all those organs. The stomach is full of all whatever that animal has eaten also.
That's right. And
So
those
he's
are,
getting vegetables and all that, all those
yeah,
things from eating those animals also.
yeah. And a lot of the animals they eat, let's say wolves, they eat caribou, this and that. Okay, so they rip it, it's separated and all that. But if they're eating a rabbit or they're eating a raccoon or they're eating some other varmint or a bird, a ptarmigan or whatever it is, they swallow the animal whole.
Yeah,
So those whatever food is in that herbivore's body gets digested into the carnivore
Exactly.
as well. It's a cycle
And it's
that's the
crazy
way
because when you say that, one of the things I started doing later on is when they eating that stuff, it's almost like pre-digested.
right.
So one of the things I had started doing later on, and maybe the last, I guess, 15 years or so, um, I got me a really, really strong blender, right?
Mm.
And no matter what I gave the dogs, I blended it up so the meal was almost like pre-digested. It
Yeah.
was broken down a lot.
Yeah.
And that gave me a consistent in their stool, made sure they got anything, because sometimes dogs, when you're feeding them, they'll pick around things.
Yeah.
So I thought, just blending it up, it seemed to me that it absorbed into their system better. And if I'm working this dog and then I'm paying attention to them every day, it gave me a consistency of what to look for, the stool's going to look like. Everything is going to should be the same.
Right. Now that's good advice. I'm glad you brought that up because even cutting up the food that you're giving them into small pieces is better than giving them big chunks of food. Whatever it is. Just
Definitely,
because
and their body is not using all that energy to break it down because it's
exactly.
been broken down so much already. So it's helping to absorb into the cell and to the stomach lining and all that things a lot easier and a lot,
A lot of Iditarod racers, up north, where they run their dogs for miles and miles, they give them that like porridge, and it's warmed up. They might get some bone in there too to chew on or whatever, or meat, but they make a porridge out of it because of that, because they need to digest it quickly for the tomorrow's race.
Oh yeah, it needs to absorb into their bodies.
Exactly.
And get the most out of it, not passing through and not being all digested. And I noticed when I started doing that too, for dogs that eat their stool and stuff like that, it usually cured that also.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah, because they if something's thicker, let's say corn or whatever. I'm not suggesting corn, but if you don't process it properly, it passes right through the dog. So there could be something in their feed if it's not made into that slurry or broke down beforehand. It could just pass through them, and they're not getting the nutrients from it. So yeah, that's a good tip, man. I like that. Yeah. Well, my friend, we're about the end of the time. I only have so much time, but I'd like to do this again if you'd be willing to.
Yeah, that would be great because we hadn't really talked about a lot of dogs. We talked about pretty much everything else.
Yeah. Well, let's do that next time. I'll get a hold of you pretty soon, and then we'll talk about different dogs. I'll just let you take over and do that. But thanks for making this video for me, and I'm sure everybody's going to love it. And we'll keep in touch, my friend. You take care. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too. Bye.